Hello and welcome to the BurnCast. I'm Brady Byrne.
And I'm Kim Cass.
Today we're looking at a book called Depth of Reality Unknown by author Milen Vinoran. As always, any criticisms directed towards the authors and works that we discuss are exaggerated for entertainment purposes.
I'm sorry. I heard you say Milen Vinoran and I was like, I can't even listen to the author's name without that cracking up.
Thank you for listening and we hope you enjoy the show. We can just get right into it now. Fuck it. Let's talk about Depth of Reality Unknown.
Oh my god.
So, this is a book that we had some deliberation on whether we should actually use for the podcast. And the main reason for that is because it is almost unreadable.
Yeah, well, we originally picked it because it was a fantasy book. I mean, it has a top seed name. I mean, what a fucking title. Really, really amazing.
Yeah, Depth of Reality Unknown is a great title.
I mean, that hooks you in so well. But the actual content, this is definitely the worst book. Grammatically written, worst book ever. It is sentence on sentence, has letters scattered everywhere.
Yeah, no punctuation. There are blatantly words missing. Sometimes words are just the first letter of a word, and then you can tell that there's like 3 or 4 words missing.
And you can almost get through it, because your brain does so much work to make it work.
Yeah.
Like, you'll read these sentences and there'll be words missing and you just have to infer, you just have to read between the lines to get what the author was trying to say.
And by that we mean literally between the lines.
Yes.
There are sentences that go something like, he had been helpless. And then the next paragraph starts with a lowercase c, could have bested him, and he was sure Wyvern knew it. Like, there's literally half that sentence missing. So, I mean, I'll read you just a sentence of this. The basic premise of this book is that it's about these espers, dragon people who rule over humanity in some capacity, and they are very powerful creatures. And the opening of the book is about a character named Bahamut about to face off with his twin brother Wyvern, and the epic struggle that is about to ensue.
And Bahamut's like the king.
Yeah.
And I will say, going into this, and in contrast with many of the other books that we read, this has absolutely no exposition. So you have no idea what you're looking at or who the people are. You're introduced to, 10, 12 characters within the first chapter. It's insane.
Yeah, there's a lot of characters in this book. Way too many. They're just dropped in, no real reference to them before.
I mean, you don't even know what they are. Are they actual lizard men? There's so much lack of explanation.
Sometimes they're human form, sometimes they're dragon form. We really don't know.
Yeah, it just really drops you in it. And I was excited for that.
Yeah.
In part because the usual books that we look at are so exposition filled.
Yeah.
But on the other side, you're just absolutely confused. I mean, come on, tell me a little bit of what I'm looking at.
Yeah. So this is on the opposite end of the exposition spectrum of things that we usually read.
Yeah.
And I'll just quickly read you a couple sentences so that you have an idea of how difficult this was for us to read. So this is about how Wyvern and Bahamut are about to face off. He still couldn't believe it. How could he have done the one mistake? That one argument ages ago. Could that really have caused this? Could he really have become so bitter? Did he really see him as such a cruel tyrant? How? H happening. His brother would have never said such things to him before, but he had been so warped by the past centuries. He couldn't believe it. He almost refused to. T, friend, he hadn't seen in generations, wanted him dead. So you could just see that there's just the letter T instead of the, and that's not like a couple grammar mistakes like you see in China Strike or something. That is literally every sentence.
Oh, yeah.
And so to actually read this book, I found it easier to just scan my eyes across the page. And the faster that I read it, the more content I picked up. Because it just becomes a blur and you can actually understand what's happening.
Now, I think me and Brady read a little bit differently. I don't know what the nuances of reading are, but I found it punishing. Because I like to read my books. If I don't understand a sentence, I go back and read it again, Yeah. So I feel like I can read quite quickly. I'm not a slow reader, but if things are complicated, especially in like a heavy sci-fi or something like that, I tend to go back and reread things and to make sure that I know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, This, with its deluge of grammatical mistakes, I found impossible. I really felt like it was dragging me under the water.
Pushing you back under when you tried to gasp for air.
Yeah, really. I mean, it was so painful. And by the time I had finished just chapter 1, at a certain point, I had to give up. So I got through the first chapter. I really slogged through the second, and then I couldn't anymore.
Yeah. Kim called me up and said, I'm gonna stop. We're gonna read something else. And I insisted that we carry on because despite that terrible writing, it seemed to have the most interesting story of all the books we've read so far. It seemed, I'll say.
Well, I think that it was surprising to me because despite how badly it was written, there was actually a conflict.
Yeah.
And there was actually a plot. And I was amazed by that. I was like, wow, I can clearly identify the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can clearly see the conflict in the main character. You know, it's his brother that he's trying to fight.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is actually
a story. Yeah.
It's so badly written, but there is a story behind it.
Yeah. We thought, you know what? Maybe there's a gem in this very rough piece of coal.
Yeah, maybe it's like a draft that just needs to be seriously reworked.
Yeah, seriously, yeah. And this is a long book.
Oh, yeah.
This is the longest book that we've read on the show, and it is difficult to read. But there was something about this book that kept drawing me in, and I didn't know it at first. And it's because this book has secrets to reveal to its readers that are not immediately apparent at first. I had an inkling, and that inkling drove me to continue and to subject myself to the torture, the absolute torture that is reading Depth of Reality Unknown.
The lashings.
So let's get into what this book is essentially about. We said it's about these espers, these powerful creatures, and they're cowering in fear of the awesome power of Wyvern, the twin brother of Bahamut, who is our main character. You have other characters like Odin, Leviathan, Starlet, and Ogopogo.
Oh.
who are the subservient espers to the king of them, Bahamut. And so in our first chapter, essentially, Bahamut is super powerful, but he's not powerful enough. He gets defeated by Wyvern. And so the plan is to send him into this time chamber so he can train for 10 years and double his power and...
Double it!
Yeah, there's a lot of power leveling in this. They're just constantly talking about how huge they get in their reptilian forms, and their muscles are bulging, and their power level is increasing.
It really felt to me like a Dragon Ball Z type scenario.
Yeah, with dragons.
Yeah, like you have these dragons and they just go into this time warp thing and they come out and their muscles are rippling and their energy is just...
Yeah, astronomical, yeah.
And you just say, oh, no one could defeat him. He's the most powerful. Like... That's how this world works.
Yeah, and so Bahamut goes into the time chamber, he comes out 10 years later, ripped as hell, and then he faces off against Wyvern, but he loses. He is shut down.
Oh yeah, big time.
He is shut down in part because his power level isn't enough to match Wyvern's, but also because of the very deep conflict he has in facing off against Wyvern. You see, Bahamut loves Wyvern. He loves him deeply because they are twin brothers. And like we said, there's really not a lot of exposition, but there is a lot of character thought in this book. And it is just pages and pages of...
Do I love him? Do I love him not? It really is like that.
Yeah, Bahamut's saying, I want to fight Wyvern. He's so powerful and he's evil, but I love him. I don't know how I can reconcile these two feelings. And it's just that for like 20 pages, literally 20 pages.
And while the writing is so bad, but the core conflict actually makes sense.
Yeah.
You have this underlying family passion for someone.
Yeah.
And you know that they're evil. You know that they have done wrong things. And they know that they will not think twice about killing you or something like that. But
you still have this feeling deep down that you can turn them.
Yeah, that you can't conquer, you know. I thought that idea, like, somewhere in the mud, if you reach down really, really far, you can find this nugget of, like, there's actually something there.
Yeah. And so they fight. They show off their dragon muscles. There's a lot of power leveling. They progress through stages of something called a Pyrrhon. Again, these things are not really established.
They're not explained, yeah. I have a long list I made in the short 2 chapters that I read. I had no idea what they were, like what Pyrrhons were, what Teratopolis was, is it a city, is it a castle? I don't know.
Yeah, they'll just be saying things like, I don't want to fight Wyvern because of what happened to Crusader, and he might turn out to be like Griever.
Yeah, and I was like, who's Griever? What is Griever?
What is Griever? What is Crusader? We don't know. Maybe they're other espers.
Yeah.
Griever seems to be an esper that turned evil, and his downfall rang throughout the esper world and has somehow affected their culture. It doesn't fucking matter.
It doesn't matter, yeah.
The story is just incomprehensible at most points. I really only have my summary here, and it is something I spent a lot of time trying to work out where the actual plot thread is in this.
Yeah, I mean, my notes are just things like characters introduced in the first chapter and things I don't know. And
yeah.
And then another note that just says, what the fuck is going on?
So you have Bahamut and Wyvern fighting. Wyvern inevitably wins, and he's going to throw Bahamut into a lava pit. But at the last second, Bahamut stabs him with his tail. The fight ends, and no one has truly won. That's essentially the end of the first chapter. Now, in chapter 2, Bahamut speaks with the other espers, and he proclaims that he was a fool to believe Wyvern could be turned back to the good side. In response, he announces his exile and relinquishes the throne to Leviathan, his kind of second in command. But Leviathan doesn't want the throne. Bahamut leaves anyways, and Leviathan accepts. And Leviathan's first act as new ruler is to purge the Esper world of the traitorous Ogopogo.
It's so funny because you're introduced to these characters, but you don't really get an inkling of whose side they're on. So
no.
In the second chapter, when Leviathan decides this, you're like, what? Why?
Yeah.
Like, I thought Ogopogo was on Team Bahamut. Like, why?
Yeah, Leviathan's just like, you're a traitor. I'm going to fucking rip your head off. And Ogopogo, he's not really built up in any way as a traitor. He only has like one line before that.
Yeah.
You just have no idea what's going on at any given point.
Truly.
So Bahamut leaves the Esper world, and he decides to go to a nearby moon with 2 other characters, Khan and Singh, in which they discovered that this moon is actually a spaceship, like sort of a Death Star kind of moon base, and it belongs to some people called Lunarians. Again, none of these things are introduced properly. They're just kind of thrown onto the page, and I had to read several times trying to figure out if this moon was a spaceship or if they saw a spaceship on the moon. Again, those sentences are so completely incomprehensible that it's really hard to tell what's happening.
I mean, when I read it, I really didn't even realize that they were on another planet, or like, I just thought Lunarians it's about as abstract as anything else. So like,
yeah.
And you're given like one sentence to get the information, and then you get so much like inner thought of what these espers are deciding on. So
yeah, I mean, I've read this whole book and I still don't really know what the espers are. I think they have like a human form and then like a reptilian form or some sort of...
It's just not explained. It really isn't.
No, it's not. It's not very explained at all. So they meet this king of the Lunarians named Fuso-Ya, who gives Bahamut and his friends a cave to live in. And he also gives them like 2 pets that look something like bison lions. Which there's no reason why he does this. I don't know, to protect them, I guess, but they're like fucking super gods. Doesn't matter. For a few years, Bahamut just hangs out in this cave and like obliterates some creatures for fun. Until he senses some sort of what he calls a hateful presence on the moon ship. He senses danger leaking from the moonship onto the planet, which she is from, causing chaos or something like that. It's so fucking confusing and abstract. But anyways, Fuso-Ya tells Bahamut that the energy comes from this evil Lunarian called Zemus. And being unable to defeat him many thousands of years ago, Fuso-Ya has put him to sleep. But his evil and hateful energy is leaking into the planet. What this Zemus guy wants to do is to link the moonship to the planet using crystals. and to use a super weapon to eliminate all life to be remade in his image.
Jesus Christ.
It's your typical super bad guy with no real motivation, wants to build a super weapon so that he can blow everything up, and then it's not really thought about much what he would do after this.
Why would you?
So Bahamut, being a super god, is just like, well, I'll go to the planet core to fight Zemus. But Fusoya doesn't want him to, for some reason. Again, none of this explained really why. So he hangs out in the cave, and there he meets some of our other main characters. He meets, like, a party of adventurers. He meets a ninja, a ranger, a summoner, a dragoon, and a paladin. It's like a typical MMO party. They show up, and they're just like, yeah, here's my quality. I'm a ninja, and I'm a dragoon. I use a lance. And it's really just that kind of thing.
You know, at this point, you can see how initially hooked in by the story, I found myself just lost in this fucking mess of a nightmare, and every sentence is trash, and you're just slogging through it, and I was so just waiting for it to end. Where's the chapter end? Where is it?
This is about where you quit, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so he meets this party in the cave. This is about where Kim quit reading the book. And the reason I stayed is because the characters that he meets have very interesting names. You have Cecil, the paladin, Edge, prince of the ninja kingdom, Rydia, a summoner, Kane, the dragoon, and another character called Rosa, who I forget what her thing is. They tell Bahamut what's been happening back on the planet, that shit's been going down there, and now Rydia wants to make Bahamut her summon. They've apparently already defeated the other Espers, Odin and Leviathan, and Bahamut has an exchange with her in which he scoffs at her, saying, oh, you think I'm going to be your summon? What do I look like? Some sort of Moogle or Chocobo? And that's where I started to get a little suspicious.
Suspicious of what?
Because I had an idea when I first started reading this. Bahamut is a name that I have heard before. I also know what a Moogle and a Chocobo are, because I happen to play a game series called Final Fantasy, and I recognize that the characters, Cecil, Edge, Rydia, and Kane, are characters from Final Fantasy IV who travel to a moon base to fight a dragon.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. That part of this book has started to reveal itself to me to be the literal exact plot of Final Fantasy IV, in which a evil Zemus character exists in a moon base and is leaking.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Don't tell me it. Don't. I don't want to hear it's fan fiction, though.
Yeah. That's essentially where I decided that this is not a book. This is Final Fantasy fan fiction from the perspective of one of the most powerful obtainable summons in that game.
No! Why did they pitch this as a story? Why?
Yeah. And so that is why I decided that we are absolutely going to talk about this book.
Because it's fan.
Yes. And if you go on the Amazon page for Depth of Reality Unknown, you will find that the page no longer exists.
What?
Yeah, I checked right before we started recording because I was going to pull it up.
What is happening, dude?
I pulled it up because I was going to look into some things about the author and that sort of thing, and you'll find that the page...
No.
Yeah, the page is gone.
That's the second book that we've had disappear on us. What is going on? Are we... I feel like we're reading a series of books that are never going to be read by anyone else.
That's correct. Kim and I now own 2 of the only copies of Depth of Reality Unknown because it's no longer purchasable. The author's page no longer exists.
Fuck, I feel obliged to read the rest then. No, I would never. Never.
I was going to pull this up because there are no reviews for this. The synopsis for this book is essentially just the first paragraph. There is no synopsis. And while I'm reading this and I discover that it's just fan fiction, I start to wonder, this wasn't sold in any way as a fan fiction.
Oh, yeah, no way. No, I mean, it was marketed straight up as like a fully legit story. I mean, to be honest.
It looked like trash.
It looked like trash, but it looked like an originally written story, at least.
Yeah, the author, Milen Vinoran, has a few other books on his page. Well, he had a few other books on his page. Now they're all gone.
Really? All of them?
His whole page is gone.
No way.
Yeah.
What? I'm like...
Now, luckily, I had some time to dig a little deeper into this when I first discovered that this was Final Fantasy fanfiction.
Unbelievable. This is blowing my mind, actually. What's... Sorry, couldn't find that page. Wow! It's incredible.
Yeah, and I started to look at some of his other books, and one of them also had this really generic name called Some Power Comes With Each, which, just like Depth of Reality Unknown, it's just a bunch of random words put in a sentence. And I started to scroll down, and I see some more character names that I recognize. I saw characters like Dairy, Maggie, Cherry, Soda, and Pony Boy, which you may recognize as characters from the classic American literature novel The Outsiders, written by S.E. Hinton.
What?
Yes, this was another book.
Fucking knockoff.
Yeah. And I did a search on some of the text in the book I found on his page and compared it to the actual text of The Outsiders. And it did not seem to appear there. So he didn't take The Outsiders and put it up on Amazon. It also seemed to be fan fiction.
Oh, man.
Now, these books are in no way said to be fan fiction. We paid like $3.99 or something for Depth of Reality Unknown.
Yeah, I mean, it's not $1 book.
No.
That's one thing. And if you want to start getting into the difference between $1 and a $4 book, I mean, there is a lot.
Yeah.
You have to take in mind, obviously the cost to the purchaser isn't much difference. But, I mean, if you're going from a $1 thing to a $4 thing...
You're either expecting more content or more quality. In this book, we get a reversal in quality and a huge jump in quantity. There is a lot of this book.
Yes. And that makes me wonder. I mean, what is this? What is going on behind the production of these books?
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that quotation marks in bold, in big bold... double the size of a normal font size, appear on the sides of books, because the idea that these are books is within the terms of the dictionary only, because they are far from that.
Yeah, so this book is a complete farce. It's a scam. And when we started this podcast, we had spent a lot of time looking on Amazon before we picked any books and had the feeling that a lot of these books are scams. We sort of said that Bucket Full of Bullets was a bit scammy and that you're kind of sold this idea about the book and then it doesn't really turn out to be that. But this is the first book that we've encountered that is literally just a scam. It's a $4.99 fan fiction, which we were suckered into buying and then is deleted from Amazon with no way to retrieve it.
This is why Amazon needs proper statistics.
They need some sort of quality control.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, you're looking at 70, 80, 100 books every single day and more.
Yeah.
I mean, we can only really look at a sliver of the amount of books that are coming through, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
We try to pick a book that looks like the sort of book that would be entertaining in a podcast format.
Yeah.
To be honest, that is our criteria. But the amount of books that are coming in, I mean, it's like standing under a waterfall and trying to find the honey droplets. It's incredible. And I just don't understand it. I feel like there must be some money behind this. I feel like the closer we get into the future, the more that I think this is just written by a computer.
Yeah, and if you try and read Depth of Reality Unknown, it kind of reads like that.
Yeah.
The sentences are so weird because you have regular sentences followed by sentences that are just missing words and sometimes it's just one letter in place. So you can tell that whoever wrote this, if a person actually wrote it, knows how to put sentences together and have a throughput of ideas. yet sometimes it's like their brain just short-circuited or something.
Yeah. Usually when you see in a book that I would say is normally written, when you write something, you write a sentence and you look at it again.
Yeah.
You know? And maybe you don't see some errors. Maybe you don't see a double word usage like the, or something like that. But you read it again, and then you think about that sentence, and you move on to the next sentence.
Yeah.
But this one, it seems like every sentence was just written as fast as possible, and then moved on to the next. It really seems like there was no reading of the last sentence.
Yeah. One of our ideas was that this book was dictated, and the translation software might have, not picked up a word or something, but then the person who dictated it didn't go back and read it and make sure that the words missing were put in place. They just literally put that up on Amazon.
Yeah. Which would have been a farce in its own, but this
is something a cut above, because at the least, this is a fan fiction of Final Fantasy IV. However, I did continue reading it, and there is even more to it than that.
No.
Yes.
Don't. I can't take any more in one day, man. Like, I can't. I fucking sat down and read this shit for 2 chapters, and now I'm wondering if I'm just reading fucking the straw pickings of a computer algorithm,
So I'm going to get into what happens for the rest of this book. Now, at this point, when I discovered what I was reading, I did not continue to read every single line. My first thought was, how much of this is just the literal plot of Final Fantasy IV? Now, if you don't know Final Fantasy, it's a series of Japanese role-playing games, and there are 15 main entries as of the recording of this episode. However, none of these stories connect to each other. Final Fantasy IV does not carry over any plot or characters into Final Fantasy V, and so on. None of the characters exist in the same world or any context. A lot of times you'll have something like a summonable creature like Bahamut appears over and over in these games. And there's like a squid-like creature named Ultros, which is usually a boss that you fight. So they have some similar creatures. Chocobos appear in all of them, but again, none of these stories connect. They don't cross over in any way. So I wanted to keep reading this story and see just how much of it was just the plot of Final Fantasy IV from the perspective of one of the summons, as Bahamut's not really a character in that game. And so I keep reading it. Bahamut meets the characters from Final Fantasy IV, who's the party you play as, essentially. And they defeat him. And it's quite funny, actually. They use spells to power each other up. Rydia, the summoner, summons Odin, who is, a past friend of Bahamut, and he comes through the portal and sees that he's about to fight Bahamut and just rides his 6-legged horse back through the portal in fear that he might be torn apart by the super king god Bahamut. They beat him, and Bahamut becomes Rydia's summon. And the very next scene is basically the party fighting Wyvern with Bahamut on their side. Bahamut is chided by Wyvern to kill his summoner. And he almost gives in due to his shame of falling so low that he is now at the whim of these lowly humans.
But I don't get it. I thought the Espers were in control of the humans. How?
Yeah, but now the humans are getting more powerful, and you'll see that as the story progresses, the summoners become the dominant race and they take control over the Espers. There's a big power struggle. So you didn't read the rest of this, so you didn't find out that there is actually quite a bit of depth of the depth of depth.
The depth of the unknown reality.
You can't even fucking say it. There is
too much depth in this unknown reality. But I still want to say, is this Final Fantasy IV in...
No, it's not quite that. There's more. There's more to it, and I'm going to get to it.
I mean, but because I'm about to bring up the wiki page for Final Fantasy IV and just read what the game was about, and I feel like that will solve my...
It wouldn't help. It wouldn't help.
No.
I decided to not tell this to Kim so that I could really mess with him a bit. So Bahamut decides not to kill his summoner for fear of becoming more like Wyvern. Now, Wyvern isn't a character in Final Fantasy IV, so you do have some original characters here. And again, Bahamut's not a character in Final Fantasy, so the perspective of this character is unique. And the character development between the Espers is also something particular to this story, if you can call it that. So Bahamut and Wyvern fight again, and they flex their dragon muscles once more. In this case, though, with the help of the humans, Bahamut apparently wins. However, at the same time, Bahamut also dies. He sacrifices himself for the life of his summoner, because apparently the tether couldn't hold or something. I don't know. Again, it was really confusing, and I was really skimming at this point. But in the next chapter, Wyvern is still alive. He somehow survived. And then you have a scene that happens off-page in which the party of ninja, paladin, summoner, whatever, go off and kill Zemus, which is essentially the climax of Final Fantasy IV. So this is not just Final Fantasy IV fanfiction from the perspective of a different character. That story arc ends, and there is much more that follows. So you have basically part of Final Fantasy IV existing in this story, and then it breaks off into much more of this story's own narrative. And I would say overall, this story has a unique narrative, and there's only a bit of Final Fantasy IV fanfiction contained within it. So the party goes off to kill Zemus, and as time passes, the summoners become the ruling subspecies of humans, and now control the Espers. At some point, the Espers discover that Bahamut is also still alive, and has been in a process of regenerating for thousands of years. And in the meantime, while they wait for Bahamut to recover, the Espers bow to Wyvern and let him rule. However, the summoners at some point have an uprising and manage to capture Wyvern as a summon as well. Then, a wizard uses the Espers to cause calamity throughout the world for thousands of years. And I am sort of skimming over these what seem like very big plot developments because they don't really happen in scenes. Like thousands and thousands of years and big events just kind of are glossed over in a few paragraphs.
And then this happened.
Yeah, sort of like that. So whereas there wasn't a lot of exposition in the start of the book, there is quite a bit in the second section. So you have this thing where Wyvern is captured, and then with the immense power of Wyvern under the humans' control, they go a bit crazy, and a wizard uses them to cause chaos for a very long time. Now, at some point, Bahamut is reborn, although he doesn't quite have his memories yet. And in his absence, there has been the birth of a godlike Esper-human hybrid named Terra. Now, Terra is a character from Final Fantasy VI.
No, dude.
Yes. Now, as far as I remember from my time playing that game, this Terra is quite different from the Terra that appears in Final Fantasy VI. And the plot that she is involved with for the rest of Depth of Reality Unknown is not in any way close to the plot of Final Fantasy VI. For the rest of the story, there are characters that they meet, also from Final Fantasy VI, that don't really have any connection to the actual plot of that game. Now, in this particular part of the story, Terra is somewhat feared by the rest of humanity. She's this godlike Esper-human hybrid, and her power is comparable to that of Bahamut. And so Bahamut is at first fearful of her. I skipped over a lot of this, but at some point they fight some spiders, and then and then Bahamut
It's like you have these godlike creatures, and they're fearful of some spiders, and then they, come out on top again.
Yeah. So you can imagine this story is out of fucking control at this point. They fight some spiders, and
what is going on, dude?
They end up in a situation where Bahamut becomes friendly with Terra, and he also becomes friendly of some other children. Now, Bahamut sort of takes these children under his wing with the aid of Terra.
Under his literal wing, or his...
Yes and no, because I have no idea if he actually has wings or not. Sometimes he's a dragon, sometimes he's a human, but he has wings. I really don't know at this point. So Bahamut is essentially becoming more human-like in the middle section of the story. He has relinquished his Esper King duties and is now kind of living his life out as the caretaker of this group of children, and Tara is also helping him sort of in a motherly role. And at one point, Tara calls Bahamut Daddy.
Oh, no.
And so you can kind of...
Yes. I don't want to hear this part of the story. I don't want to hear it.
Yes.
Don't tell me. Don't tell me there's some bullshit. Don't tell me.
Don't worry. Don't worry. It gets much worse. Or better. Depending on your perspective. So Tara calls him Daddy, and Bahamut is sort of incorporated into their life as the father role.
Bahamut is turned on.
Yeah, well... you'd be surprised.
What?
The next, the next part of this book, and really like almost 50 pages, is life as an Esper daddy until the kids assume that Tara and Bahamut are an item.
I didn't know my face could scrunch up this hard. You know, I really didn't. Oh my god.
Oh no, Kim's power level is increasing.
That was my Pyron, dude. That was my Pyron. So I just hopped into the fucking time warp field and powered up for a few thousand years and then came back and some chick called me daddy, so I obviously...
Oh my god.
Dude, you deserve a fucking award for reading, even skim reading half of this bullshit. I mean...
I can't.
You're gonna be 60 years old, and your fucking grandkids will be like, Grandpa, what did you do in your 20s, you know? And you'll be like, well, I read the book of Final Fantasy IV fanfic, and Bahamut was called Daddy. Oh my god.
Okay. I have a fucking headache right now. Okay.
Yeah, man.
The kids assume that Tara and Bahamut are an item. And somehow we think every time we find a new book that this is going to be the last weird sexual fantasy.
No! Don't tell me there's a sex scene. I don't want to... No, dude. I've had it with the weird sex robots. I've had it with this weird alpha male prerogative, and don't...
Every time we think this is going to be the last, but it always comes back.
No.
There are then 10 or so pages of Bahamut and Tara telling each other how meaningful they are to one another, and that the bond they shared is stronger than that of any bond between Espers.
No.
And then...
What could possibly...
I'm gonna just read what happens. They didn't remember anything at all until their lips gently touched. For a moment, both of them continued to hold on that, but then both of their eyes opened. In mutual shock, both of them sprung back from each other and sat on their oppo.
What?
Both look... It's just what it says. It says their oppo.
I'm just reading what it says.
It says their OPPO. And then there's no period, and then there's a capital B, for both looked nervous and began to sweat. My guess here is that it says, it's supposed to say, both of them sprung back from each other and sat on their opposite, but that half of that word is just missing. And it says, Tara reached a hand to her lips and actually felt them. Bahamut himself looked to the ground and blinked for a moment. They... and then the letter B, and then regain their senses.
What? ...
And were both shocked at how they had just... That's so hard.
Read it, Brady, read it. Read it for your willing audience. Punish them.
They were both shocked at how they had done just that, and yet it felt great. Neither of them had ever been kissed before.
Oh, great.
And it was such a feeling, and wondrous, and it had filled both with such a thrill and joy. Even if it had lasted only a moment, they couldn't deny how they felt about it. So Tara makes out with this dragon, and she talks about a character named Kefka, who is the main antagonist in Final Fantasy VI. But he's just name dropped. He doesn't really appear in the story. They go on for literally pages telling each other how meaningful they are to each other.
Pages, really, pages.
Yes. So many pages. Bahamut is talking about how he has grown to love these children. But at first he didn't think he could. He says, but like you said, I was wrong. I do love them now. I thought it was wrong for a long time. To just give love to something else so freely. I thought I undervalued it that.
My favorite, when you quote a fucking line.
Yeah, it's just there's no word there.
That.
I thought you were born loving certain things, and that was the end of it. Even these great people I met in the past. But again, I was wrong. You've shown me that now, Tara. You were a person who knew nothing of love. Or if you did, it was taken away from you long ago. You, Tara, you are a wonderful person. You are one of the greatest humans I ever met. Perhaps even the greatest human I ever met. And she tells him, yeah, you undervalue yourself too much. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone falls. But you keep getting back up. I've seen people, and then the letter O. People, people again, who let their pasts kill them inside. Others let their pasts drive into the despair and insanity, but not you. You're not hard. You're not cruel. The fact that you've... And then the letters CH... And then the word you've again.
I'm just waiting for fucking Bahamut to pull out fucking Bessie and Belle at this point. Seriously, come on.
The fact that you've grown to love these children, it means you're still very human inside. It means you're still alive. So then they kiss and they awkwardly kind of stutter and like, let's clean up this mess and get back. Yeah, Bahamut slowly added, also smiling. And, it's that classic anime thing of, like, the characters are super awkward now. And, like, 40% of this book is this. Like, life as the Esper daddy and Bahamut learning to live as a human now. And they sell bits of material to, like, a nearby town, and it's him taking care of these children. And all the children learn to love him and call him father. Learn to call him daddy. And so then there's a really creepy scene where Bahamut watches Tara undress.
No! Why on earth?
Yes.
Who? Refuse. I refuse. I don't know what I'm refusing, but I refuse.
And then Bahamut buys Tara a precious magicite jewel, which magicite is a recurring item in the Final Fantasy universe.
No.
And they kiss again.
No!
Bahamut then vows to stay with her and the children to live as a human. So you actually have some character development here. This godlike king of super dragon race people is now humbling himself and learning to love and appreciate
the simple human life.
And he's also learning to fuck half-human people.
And splurge his daddy dick.
Which, it's not really given much information, but I'm pretty sure Tara is quite young. And, of course, Bahamut is, like, thousands of years old.
No. Brady...
Yes.
Did you get off to the story? Was this some sort of satisfactory? Was this some sort of meaningful? Because maybe, I don't know what the market is for Final Fantasy fan fiction half porn. I don't know. Maybe there's a market for it.
No. It gets better. He vows to stay with her and love the children as his own. Some bandits try to attack, and Bahamut turns into a dragon and murders them.
As you would.
As they do.
Yeah.
When Tara wakes up, Bahamut asks Tara to marry him, and she says yes. They join in the bedroom, and Tara says... She talks about how originally she thought that Bahamut was going to make her into, I think, a concubine. However, the word concubine is only the letters C-O-N-C.
C-O-N-C.
It's like C-O-N-C-U. And I just have to infer that the author...
I mean, yeah, I guess concubine would be a...
That's the only explanation I have for it. Because she goes on to say, just like, you're a god king, I thought you would have had many.
Conk. You.
Yeah, conkus.
Conkus.
And Bahamut says, in fact, no, because I'm a virgin.
Oh. Oh.
Yes, our dragon king of many, many millions of years is never got his dragon needs satisfied. They have sex, and the next morning they're attacked by gargoyles.
Of course, that's what happens when you have sex, right?
Yeah, in this universe. One of the children is wounded, and Bahamut discovers that the gargoyles were sent by Wyvern, who he is off to fight. And there is a long discussion about how Terra doesn't want him to leave because now his life is with the children. And Bahamut says, no, I'll never leave my true past. You know, there is some genuine character struggle here.
I mean, you say these genuine character struggles, and I'm sitting there and I'm trying to believe it, and then
all you hear is dragon sex,
dragon kids, daddy, father, and then no, I have to fight Wyvern. Like it's come on. What's going on? What?
So
what
am
I doing with my life, dude? What is? Why am I reading these books? Like,
yeah, and this is, you know what this is? This is fucking revenge for Sword Immortal Online. This is how you're feeling right now. Is how I felt through that whole fucking conversation. And just wondering how insane you've gotten that you could actually get yourself to the end.
Because I'm talking about fucking, like, the stat pages given in star descriptions and then numerical descriptions. Sword Immortal Online will stay with me forever, dude. That book was truly an anomaly.
A masterpiece.
Yeah.
So they're off to fight Wyvern. They meet Edgar Figaro, who is a king. Sabin, Celis, and Locke make an appearance, who are all characters from Final Fantasy VI.
No, fuck off, dude. Just...
They fight Ultros, who is the slimy octopus creature who is often a boss in Final Fantasy games.
Why can't people write their own stories? Why can't they? Why can't you write a story by yourself? Why do you have to take other people's ideas?
Oh, but the love story between Bahamut and Terra is all original work.
No. Oh my god.
There's a bunch of bullshit in between. I'm skipping like 50 pages now because literally nothing else happens. At some point, Terra turns into her half-Esper form to fight Ultros, and Bahamut is in his dragon form. And he talks about how beautiful she is in her Esper form, with her glowing pink aura. And he says, I never told you this, but you're beautiful in that body. A pause, and then an apology. I mean, I love you as a human as well. And gorgeous there too. But you seem so vivid and free in that form. You have a natural beauty to you. Terra's pink aura, if at all possible, seemed to turn a bit redder. She bowed her head for a moment, but then looked up and back to Bahamut. And then she says, I think I feel the same way about you like that. You are a terrible-looking creature, and you look so horrific and monstrous. And yet, you have that inner beauty as well. Yo, beautiful because you're such a pinnacle of power and strength. It's like how people admire predators, not because they're so savage, but because they have some sort of motion about them, some sort of fluidity and perfection and strength and skill. And then Bahamut grins and says, I'll take that as a compliment.
Oh my god. You know, I went into this with such... You know, I really read these stories. You know, I really read these stories with the best possible bias. Like, this time it's going to be a good book. This time it's going to be fucking excellent. This time it's going to be something.
This time it's not going to be overly gratuitous sexual fantasy.
Oh my god.
Anyways, eventually they encounter Wyvern, who's secretly posing as a human. Wyvern tries to get Bahamut back on his side and says that he's the one who had Bahamut restored after their battle. Wyvern attacks Terra, who becomes horribly injured. They fight. They flex their dragon muscles.
Flex them.
Bahamut charges up a attack, and then the book ends.
What?
Yeah, no, it just ends mid-scene.
No.
Yeah, I'll read you the last...
No, don't.
Yes.
Don't read it to me. I don't...
I'm going to read you just the last paragraph here. They're fighting, and it says, Bahamut went to work. While lying there, he began to summon his power to himself. It hurt now. Even breath attacks made his body burn and ache. But he continued to flesh began to quiver, and his body trembled. But he focused. Soon, he managed to go beyond the level of Pyron, and then Pyron. He didn't go all the way to his omniapex, continued to increase his force, bringing himself all the way up to Omega Pyron. The end. The attack is never finished, and we do not see what happens to Wyvern, nor do we conclude the love story of Terra and Bahamut, or the ongoing battle of the Espers and their fight to wrestle their influence back over the humans or the summoners or the Lunarians. None of that shit. The book just ends mid-paragraph, and that is why we say that this book is a fucking scam, because it is not even a complete piece of fiction or fan fiction or some weird mix-mash of fan fiction and original work. I don't know what the fuck this book is or who it was intended for. We bought it and then it disappeared from the world, and there is no evidence that it ever existed.
Now, I really want to stress, Brady, man, you ain't got to put yourself through that sort of shit. You know, I really feel for you. I've been through some books myself that have caused me trouble, and I want to reach out to you and say that if you're feeling any trauma, if you're feeling any bad, negative feelings about this book, you know, we can talk about it. We can discuss it. I can help you get through it, you know? But holy shit. Now, it really brings us to the climax. You know, it really brings us to the climax. What is this?
Yeah.
Is this a book written by something that is not human? Is it a book written by something that is human but has no fucking idea what a book is? Is it something written by half a person? Like, you know, someone could take ideas from different fan fictions, compile them together, and just never, ever, ever see if it works? Like, I really don't know. How do you describe this? What is going on in our world today? I'm left perplexed. I read the first 2 chapters. I have character notes on Khan, Noonien, Ogopogo, Odin, Starlet, Bahamut, Wyvern, Leviathan, Crusader, Griever, Lich. What happens to them?
Nothing.
But, I fail to believe that a story can introduce so many characters.
Yeah, that's what's perplexing to me, is there seems to be so much fucking thought and effort put into building out these characters and their relationships, and this weird context where the story takes place across multiple Final Fantasy games, but also has its own story. And then there's just no conclusion. Like, the person wrote like 400 pages of this and then didn't finish it. And then they just sold it online. A couple people bought it. 2 fucking idiots with a podcast. And then they took it out from the world. And we sound like insane people because people can't even go to the internet to prove that this thing exists.
Dude, I mean, if anyone out there thinks that we are making this up, I will fucking copy every single page of this book and I will send it to you directly by email. Like, you deserve to read this shit. It is...
Well, that's sort of our job at this point, isn't it? We have to preserve this sacred text.
I mean, yeah.
For aeons to come, people must know about the struggle of Bahamut and Wyvern.
Yeah, and Ogopogo.
An enduring love between Terra and her dragon fucktoy.
And, oh my god. Oh my god. Look, I don't know what to tell these people out there, you know? I don't know what we are doing with this. I don't know why we are looking at these books. I feel like it's funny, but the amount of pain that I experience outweighs the pleasure, you know? It outweighs it, and
I feel like I'm slowly going insane. I thought Sword Immortal was kind of the peak of the weird, messy shit that we would discover. And it's not like we could have picked this book for its messiness on purpose. You know, we only got a sneak peek of it on Amazon before you have to purchase the rest of the text. We saw the bad grammar. We saw the ridiculous, like, characters and that sort of thing. But there's no way. Just like with Johnson the Mantis, we couldn't have predicted that the main part of that story would be about a sex robot. We just thought that that was going to be a funny aspect of it. And here we are again by some
fucking
twisted facet of the universe.
Some sort of combination of this personal insanity that people experience when... I really don't understand how you can sit down and write a whole fucking book that makes no fucking sense.
And then not even finish it.
I know! What is going on? Like...
Well, that's in part of why we're here. We're here to investigate what the fuck is happening over at Amazon and just the weird underworld of these books that no one is going to read or ever hear about. And just the kind of mystery that surrounds them.
I remember me and Brady having a conversation a long time ago when we were first discussing this podcast. And we thought, there's a lot of books coming through, you know, and there's a lot of people writing, and it's hard to get out there. And, you know, if you're a writer these days and you write something good, maybe you don't even make any money from it. It's just an art form that it's losing its economic value.
Yeah, it's losing its economic value and its status.
Yeah.
As something that a certain group of intellectual people can do. Now, literally anyone, or not even a real person, if Milen Vinoran is even a person, can just upload their shit to Amazon and get suckers like us to buy it.
And it frustrates me because I had this idea that, man, we're going to look at some funny books, but I thought that the people that were writing books were people like us.
Yeah.
You know, that they were writing stories and that they were trying their best.
Yeah.
And that they were producing a story, and if they just had a few writing lessons and maybe sat down with a couple of people that critiqued them really hard and showed them where to make changes, that the story would be fine.
Yeah.
You know, that they could produce a piece of art just like a painter with enough practice can produce a beautiful piece of art.
Yeah.
And now
we read something like Depth of Reality Unknown, which makes the previous titles we've looked at on this show look like
good.
Really good. Like, it makes them look like they were written by angelic scribes
whose lettering looks like artwork in itself. They paint every letter, you know?
Yeah, and those stories and those characters will stick with me forever. And this isn't even attainable anymore. No one can even look to see that this was a thing.
Now, I'm left truly somber. You know, truly somber. And now when I pick up a piece of literature, I'm going to remark at every single word written and thank the fucking gods that it's not this book. Jesus Christ.
So that's Depth of Reality Unknown, or what we could parse from it, at least.
If you want more...
Too bad.
Too bad.
You want the rest of the story? Too bad. It's not attainable.
Yeah.
We'll never know.
Gotta be quick.
So, next time on the show, we don't even have a fucking book for next time. This book broke us.
Yeah, we don't even have a fucking book. This book dismantled us into little tiny baby boys, and we are infantile and now... Yeah, I really just need to read a good book. I'm not sure what to do with my life anymore.
So, next time on the show, we'll be talking about something else. We don't even have it planned at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, what can you plan after that?
What can you do to follow this? We want to read something good.
Something. I don't know.
Looking back at China Strike, that book is a fucking A+.
Yeah.
And it was solid all the way through.
Yeah.
And we're going to try and find something like that. I don't fucking know anymore. This book broke me.
Yeah. Smashed. Thank you everyone for listening and supporting the show. And please, if you can, support us on Patreon, and doubly so, share our podcast with your friends. It's a huge help, and thank you to all of those who already do that. If you have a book you want us to look at, share it with us on one of our platforms and we'll consider it for the show. Thanks!